Hi there, I am Dr. Siki Gwanya-Mdletye, and in this brief video, I am going to answer the question, practically, what does an inclusive work environment look like in regards to people living with mental illness in the workplace? Let's break it down. I think there are very specific considerations that one can make within the organization to ensure that it is an inclusive environment. And I think one common one that we interface with is that of reasonable accommodations, right? Labor law requires for employers, particularly in regard to employing people living with disabilities, to create workplaces that reasonably accommodate those disabilities within the workplace. Accommodations in regard to mental illness can actually look like flexible hours, can look like quieter workspaces, right? Because sometimes mental illness does render one quite sensitive to noise, sensitive to crowded spaces. So this would look, for instance, in an office environment where there's an open plan, right? Considerations could look like, securing a cubicle, or even just putting up, physical cubicle spaces, or physical barriers that create that environment that separates the worker from others, so that they can feel that they are in an enclosed space and not within that open space with everyone around. Some considerations could look like modifications, for instance, with work hours, right? So not rigidly applying working hours to, in this company, we work from this time to this time. So for instance, allowing that one comes in slightly later if they will leave a bit later. That one can work hybrid format if that is feasible within that environment. And this is why these accommodations are called reasonable accommodations. The challenge I always make is to say, if we are to think less rigidly about the work structure, where can we be more flexible to accommodate the specific limitations that this mental health or this mental illness presents, right? Sometimes these advice or pieces of advice can come from the treating physician, for instance, from the psychiatrist, can come from occupational therapists, can come from even wellness practitioners within the workplace. But it does require for an employer who is open to those recommendations around reasonable accommodation. A second way in which practically a workplace can be more inclusive can be to train line management to be more supportive. Now, this is not to say that managers need to be therapists. They don't. Managers don't need to do the therapy or to become counselors or that sort of thing. But they do need training to be able to recognize distress, and to be able to respond appropriately to distress, to be able to refer when referral is necessary, and to do that discreetly, to do that in a way that does not shame the person, and to do that in a way that is supportive as opposed to compliant, right? So if it's a requirement for a manager to refer, the referral can feel compliant, can feel like the manager is saying, oh, you're presenting in this way, the company requires me to refer you, so there, go. The feeling behind that, can feel incredibly dismissive and belittling in a way to the person with mental illness. So supportive line management is the second very practical way in which the workplace can be more inclusive, supportive to the extent of being able to identify distress, to the extent of being able to recognize distress, and to, with empathy, respond appropriately and refer if necessary. So the company, and a lot of companies do have the resources, for instance, for employee assistance programs and the like. But for me, it's always interesting, the low utilization of those. And I think that's a story or a topic for another day, in terms of how much do the workers trust that EAP service. But yeah, I think supportive line managers, because if you face it, people interface with the line manager every day, and this is the person that they associate with the company's or the organization's leadership. So it's critical, it's vital that the people that are, in touch with the workers every day, these are the, you can say, first response when it comes to mental illness within the first place. So having setting an intention as an employer to upskill, that management is a worthwhile investment beyond just having or paying large sums of money for EAP service, but actually training the managers to be competent to do these things, right? A third way that practically inclusion can look like is for these processes to be confidential, right? To be safe, right? Because if there is a sense that if I disclose to my manager the whole line, or the whole, like, everyone gets to know, or everyone in management gets to know, there's no safety in that. There's no psychological safety in that. And the employee can feel that, the environment is punitive, that the environment does not lend itself to safe disclosure, and so they'll keep it to themselves when they're struggling. And the first thing that will notify the organization that someone was struggling is a sick certificate, and that's less than ideal, right? And I think that the last way that I'll touch on this video, in which you can ensure that the environment is inclusive, is to have representative leadership. What do I mean? I think representation matters, right? And so including people that have lived experience of mental illness in all the levels of leadership within the organization, so that as you build and shape policies, as you build a culture within the organization, we're not only talking about the workers on the ground, but we have people within the organization at all the levels of leadership that have lived experience of mental illness. And this is where I think it becomes very important for those who lead in their organization and who have personal experience with mental illness. This is where it becomes important that there is, obviously with some boundaries, some level of vulnerability. This is where vulnerability matters. This is where it matters that your staff know that you've had your own fair challenges with mental illness, because as you talk about your own experience, this creates an environment where they begin to feel that they're not alienated, that they can too safely talk about their mental illness. I hope that was helpful. I hope that was helpful in terms of getting you, if you are a manager or a leader in your organization, to think through practically how can inclusion look like. And I hope if you're someone who struggles with mental illness and perhaps might be not feeling safe enough within your workplace to talk about your illness, I hope this gives hope, that at some point we're gonna get there, and your mental health matters. Your mental well-being matters. Have a lovely day and God bless. Bye.